Stop exporting terror. That's the message India is sending to Pakistan as it seeks the death penalty for the lone survivor of the Mumbai attacks. What is Islamabad's position on this, and what about the already strained ties between the two countries? This is Inside Story. Hello there, welcome to the programme. I'm Nick Clark. After 18 months and over 650 witnesses, the 2008 Mumbai gunman is convicted. Mohammed Ajmal Kasab has been found guilty on all 86 charges against him, including waging a war against India. He'll be sentenced on Thursday. The judge will decide whether he gets life in prison or a death sentence. Now, Kasab was, of course, one of the 10 gunmen involved in coordinated attacks across Mumbai, which left 166 people dead. He was the only one captured alive. The Indian government was quick to blame Lashkar-e-Taiba, the Pakistan-based militant organisation. Kasab confirmed the speculation and confessed he was sent on a suicide mission by his Pakistani handlers.
We just continued to shoot and shoot. They said, as long as you are alive, keep killing.
Well, the Indian government hopes the verdict will send a strong message to their neighbour. The two countries have a history of strained relations spanning over 6 decades.
The judgment itself is a message to Pakistan that they should not export terror to India.
So to take this subject, this debate on, are our guests. In New Delhi, we're joined by the former Indian diplomat K.C. Singh. In Islamabad in Pakistan, Maria Sultan, she's the director of the South Asian Strategic Stability Institute. And in the States, in Washington, D.C., Brian Katulis, he's a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. Welcome to you all. Thanks very much indeed for joining us on the programme. Maria, if I could start with you, Maria Sultan. Pretty clear, isn't it, Kasab's guilt? Pakistan can't have any problems with the verdict.
I think we need to see the issue very clearly. As far as the issue of terrorism is concerned, Pakistan has a very clear stance on it, that it needs to be seen in the correct legal context, and most importantly, it doesn't need to be politicized in a way in which all acts of crime are considered on the basis of one person alone. It is very interesting to see the verdict which the Indian court has given, because on the one side they have totally blamed Ajmal Kasab, but they've totally acquitted the 9 other members of Indian heritage from their acts of terrorism. Terrorism is definitely a global problem. Pakistan has never shied away, and in the case of Ajmal Kasab, has not said that it's not willing to take its responsibilities.
So you're saying that India has politicised this whole thing, are you?
I think they have politicized it, and they've tried to blame India-Pakistan relationship and its progress on a single point agenda, and that is the Mumbai attack. I think that is unhelpful for any kind of a regional progress or a regional normalization if you're looking for it. The question is, we're dealing with a terrorism problem which is definitely global, that's definitely regional, and we need all parties concerned to help in this process. And I think in Ajmal Kasab's case also, the investigation help which Pakistan provided to India was critical. Pakistan asked India to provide that input back as well to Pakistan.
Let's throw this straight across to New Delhi, to K.C. Singh. It doesn't look like this whole Mumbai issue is going to go down, is it?
No, I think it wasn't politicized. There was a lot of disappointment in India because the initial reaction out of Pakistan, in fact, as the incident was going on or just finished, was of complete denial, of saying there's just absolutely no possibility of anyone from Pakistan being involved. And then when a television channel, Pakistani television channel, tracked down the father of Kasab, still there was denial. Former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif one day said, yes, he is a Pakistani, and next day denied it under pressure. So the impression which the public opinion got in India was that instead of being cooperative and helpful, Pakistan was just cutting its links and saying we have nothing to do with it. And it's only subsequently, I think, when combination of US pressure, FBI having unraveled the track of voice over internet, telephony, contemporaneous telephone accounts which India had recorded, and the boat on which they had come, the GPS system, etc. When all that put together, an electronic trail going all the way back to Karachi and beyond, and there was a lot of US pressure because a number of US citizens were killed, that Pakistan finally, very grudgingly, very slowly arrested 1, 2, and finally many people. Whereas India's point was that take the responsibility. This goes up to the highest echelons in the Lashkar-e-Taiba or Jamaat-e-Dawa, as it is now called, and that please be responsible, because this has happened since '98, when we've had a composite dialogue 4 times.
Okay.
And every time it has interrupted the dialogue process. So unless you insulate, unless you take steps, the dialogue process will get affected.
Maria Sultan, it did take Pakistan an awful long time to get moving on this, didn't it?
I think we'll have to see the things in the context. It's interesting, and I think he is very representative of the view which came out from New Delhi, and that was that the moment anything happens in New Delhi, the knee-jerk response is that Islamabad is responsible. When you are dealing with a situation which has got the potential of actually impacting on India-Pakistan relations and actually affecting very strong countries in a very negative manner, it is necessary that you take a cautious approach but a responsible approach. Pakistan did all of that. In terms of providing aid and in terms of providing transparency for the investigators, Pakistan could have equally turned around and said the FBI, and for that matter any other Indian investigations which were ongoing within Pakistan, would not be allowed if Pakistan was not trying to be cooperative on that. And I think secondly, even if you're dealing with the issue of terrorists or we're dealing with any other issue, it needs to be done correctly. Because if it's not done correctly, then you have situations like Guantanamo Bay, in which you might believe that what they have done is wrong, and you might be in a position in which you cannot judicially prove that, and that is counterproductive in the long run in terms of establishing the right legitimacy for the people who are fighting for the right cause in terms of establishing peace and stability and eradicating terrorism.
All right, let's bring in Brian
Katulis in this
now.
context is why it was not given to the International Criminal Code.
Okay, I just wanted to throw it across to Washington now, Brian Katulis. What about the man himself, Ajmal Kasab, who's awaiting sentence? Do you think his particular story ends here, or is there a possibility that Pakistan may yet call for his extradition?
Well, Pakistan has called for his extradition before, but I hope this is the close to what I think was a very dangerous chapter in the broader South Asia regional dynamics. And I think one thing we need to remember is that this individual was tied to a terrorist group that has attempted to bring India and Pakistan into war several times. And that's the main goal of some of these terrorist and extremist groups. And they operate on both sides of the border. And fortunately, in that sensitive period after the Mumbai attacks in late November and then through December and January after it, India and Pakistan did step away from the brink of a broader conflict. But we need to understand that these terrorist organizations have a complete objective in mind, and it is to upset the regional balance. It is to actually punch above their weight, above the credibility that they have in their own society, and to disrupt the stability in a very tenuous situation. And I hope that both India and Pakistan continue on this process of trying to build confidence with each other, because they have too much shared interests in common to allow these sort of terrorist groups and horrific incidents like this to actually upset their shared interest in broader stability and economic development and prosperity in that part of the world.
You talk about upsetting the balance, Brian. Let's just take a look at relations, at that balance between India and Pakistan since the Mumbai attacks in November 2008. After that, in February 2009, Pakistan admitted for the first time that the attack was partially planned and launched from Pakistan. And 3 months later, India said it was up to Pakistan to repair relations between the two nations by cracking down on fighters on their own soil. July saw India and Pakistan agree to work together to fight terrorism, but after a meeting between the Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and his Pakistani counterpart in Egypt, resumption of peace talks were ruled out. In August, India gave Pakistan new evidence to investigate the Mumbai attacks. And in February of this year, February 2010, India offered new talks with Pakistan at the highest diplomatic level. And then we spin on finally to April, and the Prime Ministers of India and Pakistan meet in Bhutan for their first direct talks in 9 months. Casey Singh, from your point of view, where are we now with relations between the two countries? How would you sum it up in a nutshell?
Well, we have a Prime Minister who has invested a lot of political capital, sometimes even despite resistance within his own political party, to again reach out to Pakistan. And he's said time and again, I'll go more than half the way. But he also realizes, and that's what happened in Egypt, that the joint statement, which was crafted to somehow insulate the dialogue process from terrorism, was taken to mean one thing in Pakistan, meaning resume the dialogue and we'll see whether we can do something about terrorism. In India, it was taken to mean it doesn't matter whether terrorism continues or not, we are going to talk to Pakistan, and he came under a lot of pressure, so he had to then pull back.
But this time what they've done is sorry, forgive me for jumping in, but is the view in India that the Mumbai attacks were all part of state policy?
The Lashkar-e-Taiba, there is enough evidence over the years. Lashkar-e-Taiba is very closely linked to the ISI, the Inter-Services Intelligence Wing of the Pakistani military. And that is why you would find that while Pakistani Taliban has got other kinds of Punjabi groups going and helping them and find the Pakistani military, the Lashkar-e-Taiba has never gone after the Pakistani military. They're completely controlled by it. So they have no part, nothing to do with the Pakistani Taliban. Which is at crossroads with the military. And therefore, the taste of the pie is in the eating. If Pakistan had acted very quickly, in fact, only last year on Kashmir Day, early this year on Kashmir Day, the head of Lashkar-e-Taiba, who had been arrested, released, was at a public rally in Lahore, again recommending jihad against India. Now, unless these people are collared, unless they are really, a clasp is put on them, they will continue to affect, as the interlocutor from Washington said, on the bilateral process.
Let's spin it across to Maria Sultan. Sorry about this, but we've just got to make sure we use all the time we've got and share it around. Maria, listen, during Kasab's interrogation, he said there are at least 300 to 500 people like him already trained and indoctrinated and ready to go and cause all manner of mayhem. Has Pakistan done enough to deal with these people?
I think Pakistan is sorely challenged at this moment because we find ourselves in the middle of a very volatile situation, to say the least. In terms of the state's commitment, in terms of the transparency which has been shown by Pakistan with regards to the issue of terrorism, it has been certainly unprecedented. And in terms of whether or not we can isolate the problem of terrorism from this region, I think for that you would need a much more concentrated approach, not only starting from Pakistan or for that matter starting from India, but it has to be a collective framework if we are going to move beyond. Because these non-state actors do have a capacity and a potential to work through, they can work transboundary, they can work in transboundary situations. And most importantly, whenever there is situations in which terrorism thrives, a lot of it is also linked to the basic administrative failure, whether it was the question of Swat, in which Pakistan faced a problem of terrorism, or whether it's a question of Kashmir, where there are basic human rights violations and basic administrative issues, and most importantly, there has not been any substantial progress on that account, that these terrorist organizations tend to exploit that for their own benefit.
Okay,
so
Brian
I think
Katulis,
if we need to address this, we will have to bring those factors into consideration.
Brian Katulis, it's a real mess, isn't it? And such a messy state of affairs makes you wonder how a real thaw in relations can actually happen.
Well, I'm optimistic because I actually think there's a great deal of potential if we stay focused on what the common interests are. And look, from the American perspective, there are deep problems in South Asia with the broader issue of terrorism, and I agree with Maria about this. We just had an attempted attack in Times Square where it seems that it has some sort of link to Pakistan, perhaps, and it's still early to see this, but many of the plots, and it goes both ways. We've had Americans actually go to Pakistan, 5 individuals from Northern Virginia go there and try to perpetrate attacks. The broader issue is this: how do we, as leaders in this world, work together, India, Pakistan, the United States, to actually reduce tensions at the official level and then fight the common enemy or adversary, which are these terrorist networks? And how do we make sure that the actions are swift? And I actually think perhaps a lesson learned from this horrific attack in Mumbai in 2008 is that we can work together. Yes, we won't always agree on particular verdicts or how things are handled, but we need to stay focused on the stronger interest of defeating these terrorist groups. And the last thing here is I think the Obama administration is trying to execute a much more nuanced policy where we're trying to maintain a strong relationship between U.S. and India. India was invited to the first state dinner here in November of last year, and we have extensive diplomatic contacts, while similarly trying to work with a broader range of actors in Pakistan, and importantly, reach out to the Pakistani people people. We just had the 4th round of a strategic dialogue in Pakistan, and executing this, I think, is extremely difficult. But we need to keep extremely focused like a laser on the challenges that are out there and remain hopeful that actually we can achieve some progress, because I think the ingredients are there for building a better relationship in South Asia.
All right, Casey's saying, what about this view that Pakistan believes that India is trying to squeeze as much mileage as possible out of the whole Mumbai event and the subsequent trial and so on and so forth, that actually isn't doing enough to try and heal the wounds?
I think Pakistan is a democracy now, and Pakistan should realize that public opinion is very, very strong. I was on television channels yesterday, almost the whole day after the verdict. And if you tried taking a moderate stand, you could find 4 opinions immediately confronting you and saying, you know, why are you doing this? In fact, on one of the channels, I was trying to explain that it'll be useful to take the judgment and give out all the details to the public opinion in Pakistan so that they come to know, because the FBI people had come here and deposed before the court, and American view has more currents than Indian opinion in Pakistan. 3 persons, a former commissioner of police, 3 others just attacked me. So why should we market our judgment there? What's wrong with the Indian judgment? So the public opinion, I think, has got, because this was a 9/11. You must understand it. It went on for over 3 days, continuously on television channels, and people have been very, very deeply emotionally hurt. And despite that, the Prime Minister, I think the 2 Prime Ministers, when they met, and that's what they've done, they said, let's restore confidence, let's move on. And perhaps I agree with your interlocutor in Pakistan, we'll have to move perhaps behind the curtain. Some things Pakistan cannot do openly. They'll have to take the steps. They cannot give those commitments in public, but certainly let them put their money where the mouth is.
Okay, well, as we've been discussing, the trial conviction could ensure that the old wounds between these rival nations stays open. Let's take a look at the few possible future relations of the future of relations between India and Pakistan. Firstly, they could, of course, resume talks in which India will undoubtedly pull all the strings to force Pakistan to curb the activities of groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba. Failing that, relations could deteriorate further, and if this is the case, India may face future attacks on its soil, halting any possibility of progress. It's true to say respective prime ministers talked up the possibilities in Bhutan of renewed relations, but it remains to be seen precisely what happens. Maria Sultan, from your point of view, how difficult a line is it for either side, for both sides to tread?
I think we need to be very clear on one account, that when you're talking about the Pakistani public opinion as well, it is also a very critical factor. And when you have a situation in which the problem is totally externalized, that only the terrorist activity happened in New Delhi, or it happened in Mumbai only because of the Pakistani interlocutors, and the court judgment does not even touches the Indian perpetrators in this, and they do not even raise the same level of terrorist charges against them. It creates a lot of confusion within Islamabad and the public opinion over here, that whether or not it is actually geared towards collaboration in terms of coming up with joint operations or joint anti-terrorist operations or activities, or is it something which is being politicized in terms of mileage? And that means that there is a counter pressure on the government of the day, whatever the government is going to be here. And at this moment, the government of the day is under severe pressure that while they're asking India to move progressively on a composite dialogue and perhaps discuss all related issues with India on this channel, is it actually worthwhile? Or is it actually not a possibility to work with India on various issues, because they have totally brought the India-Pakistan relationship to a one-point agenda? And in a one-point agenda, how much movement is possible?
Brian Katula said, from a regional perspective, obviously this is an incredibly important region with everything that's going on there. How important is it that this relationship is resolved, is brought back onto an even keel? How nervous are people from the outside, from Washington, D.C., where you are, looking in at what's going on?
Look, the last thing we need is more tension in this part of the world. The United States is risking the lives of almost now 100,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan, and we should bring Afghanistan into this picture too, because when I traveled to Pakistan, the perception that I hear from people, senior officials in the government, I've met with the ISI and others, they point a finger to India and they fear encirclement. When I go to New Delhi, I hear the fears of Indian officials about what Pakistan is doing and working with non-state actors. All of these perceptions and fears, though it sometimes may be over-amplified, are legitimate, are grounded in some sort of reality which shapes the calculations of all the actors. What we essentially need to do is to look at this holistically, and I think my colleagues in New Delhi and Islamabad agree with this, that you can't just point to one individual group or one particular country, that there needs to be a collective effort to reduce tensions. And I think from the U.S. strategic perspective, I think most Americans would like to see not only a reduction of violence and instability, but also looking for the opportunities for cross-border trade throughout all of the countries in the region, and the missed opportunities, quite frankly, for increasing the security and prosperity for everybody. That may seem hopelessly idealistic, but I actually think that these tragic incidents and the people who died in attacks like the Mumbai attacks and the thousands of Pakistanis who have died at the hands of militant groups also, if there's anything we can we the living can do to move beyond all of this, is to actually work together for a common future.
Just getting towards the end of the program, KCC, I'm going to give you about 45 seconds to answer this question, because I want to pass it on to Maria at the end. Do you think Indian politicians, Pakistani politicians, have it in them to try and resolve this and look at this problem holistically, as Brian Katulis was saying?
I think they're doing that, but the problem with the composite dialogue is that it's a mixture of confidence-building measures and dispute resolution. Nowhere else in the world do you move simultaneously with confidence-building measures, people to people, commerce, and so on and so forth, and also bring the disputes on the table. That's because Pakistan refused to move ahead. Now additional subjects have come in, which is terrorism, and Pakistan has brought in water. Ideal will be, as you recalibrate the dialogue, first go on the confidence-building steps, which in the past Pakistan has rejected because Pakistan loads the difficult part up front. Go up the calibrated, go with the confidence-building steps and slowly get into the disputes. Some of them, I believe, during President Musharraf's time, including Kashmir, were very close to at least some kind of a solution, though the current government in Pakistan is denying it, but Musharraf has been pronouncing it, and government of India has not denied it. There was a lot of progress through the back channel before Musharraf himself ran into domestic problems.
That's well over 45 seconds. We need to pass it on to Maria Sultan. Maria, what's your view about this?
My view is that the fact of the matter is that India and Pakistan are two very important countries in the region, and they have to come out of the politics of believing that they can actually curb the policy of the other. They have to work collectively. The CBM's approach has not worked in Pakistan and India's case because each party was negotiating the CBMs at the context of how they were impacting on their Pakistan-US relations and India-US relations. So whenever there's a crisis situation, you bring the United States in to do the firefighting and the international community. And as a result, thinking that perhaps it's a mileage point and points on which perhaps they can increase their power. The reality is, the hardcore reality is that these are two nuclear states. These are two states which in the region are in a situation of strategic parity, if not, equal parity in this context. And if we have to move ahead, we should come out of the politics in which we believe that we can actually force policy change in the other just because we can have certain mileage at one point in history or perhaps other. That's the only way forward.
Righto. Thank you very much indeed for that. Thank you all for participating in this. Maria Sultan, KC Singh in New Delhi, and in Washington, D.C., Brian Katulis. Very interesting discussion. Thanks very much indeed. And thank you for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. As ever, we'd like to hear from you. Your comments and suggestions, just email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. From me, Nick Clark, it's goodbye.